That's the face of this.
Oh.
You hated that. Hey, Lindsay, did we put the bottle opener somewhere?
On the shelf.
So we should put it like here, and then there's.
And I opened up all the food, so we just have to take it out.
Why don't we open it on? Thanks for making the trip. Sorry you're here. I thought I'd just take a minute to tell you what happened. Some people know. So Tim had a terrible cardiac event called an aortic dissection, which is basically the lining of your aorta starts to split away. It's super dangerous. This was caused by untreated high blood pressure, like chronic untreated high blood pressure for years and years. The doctors could tell that because of the size of his heart, the way his heart was shaped. So that led to other problems. It's not just a heart issue. Tim's kidneys failed, and in order to save his life, they had to lower his blood pressure, because it was basically going to stroke him out. Well, in lowering the blood pressure, he had what are called a series of ischemic strokes, and that's actually what basically killed him. He went into a coma the night, basically the morning after he was hospitalized, and he remained there for 3 weeks. So, some of you know my parents both died really suddenly. I got to spend time with Tim at Stroger, and I've said it to them, and that was a very, in the midst of, as bad as it was a positive experience. They really cared for Tim. And the only thing I'll say about it is, there are many reasons why Tim remained untreated with his blood pressure. One of them is that, he didn't have access to health care. And it's, kind of a bitter irony that he got access to socialized medicine only to be on a ventilator for 3 weeks and then die. So, we're going to celebrate his life here. I think the weather's okay. At the end of this, you follow along in your programs. If you don't have one, we'll get one to you. But our plan is to take this bottle and chuck it into the waves. And let's see where it goes. As I wrote in the program, Tim spent most of his life around the basin in Lake Michigan, from Wisconsin to here. Actually one of our big trips, there were a couple of scouts here from 699. One of our big spring trips was at the Indiana Dunes. So this is a place that Tim has been, and it's sort of dear to him. So we picked it for location, but also because it meant something. So that's it, really. Thanks for coming, and we'll take it from here.
Spiritual. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Glory, 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 hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. No more sickness, no more sorrow, since I laid my burden down. No more sickness, no more sorrow, since I've laid my burden down. All my troubles will be over, since I've laid my burden down. All my troubles will be over, since I've laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I've laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I've laid my burden down.
So Tim's childhood friend, Chris Lavery, I also want to acknowledge that obviously we're doing this in the middle of a pandemic. There are many people who would be here but for that pandemic. And there are people, I want to also say, there were people on this guest list who right now have COVID. So I want to send just my thoughts to those people too. I mean, it's a bad time. But Chris couldn't come. His daughter's actually quarantining, or he'd be here. So he sent along a video that he made in his car. It's about right.
Hello, my name is Chris Lavery, and here to say a couple things about my friend Tim, who passed away. I want to thank his brother Brett for putting this memorial together, and I just want to say that I've known Tim. I first met Tim in kindergarten. He lived at corner of 83 and 83 and 86th Avenue, and I lived about a mile south of there, and we went to grade school together. And as we got older, he was in Nova classes, and I wasn't, so started the path for Tim and his big brain right there. But we did Little League together, ran some great teams, had a lot of fun with that, and got to know Tim much more in high school through music. Liked a lot of the same bands, Screaming Trees, Tad, Afghan Wigs, and of course Soul Asylum. We went and saw Soul Asylum together at the Riv with Lemonheads. That was a good show. Drove Tim around a lot, had a lot of conversations, good times. You know, he was a unique guy, real smart guy. Just, you know, he was unique, man. He was unique. I thought it was really funny how he was offended by our '93 yearbook that it said a little Looney for Looney Tunes. He took offense to that. He was stuff that bugged him was funny. But we lost touch after high school, and when Facebook came around, reconnected. Did his little movie trivias that he did every day. That was cool on Facebook. That was fun. And I won tickets to see Richard Thompson. And my wife couldn't go. We had a new family. And So I was on Facebook seeing who else likes Richard Thompson, and his name was the only one that came up. So we went and saw Richard Thompson together, and that was a great time. I remember he was real pissed about some woman talking and drinking, but I mean, we're at a club, you know. But that was Tim, you know. And it's last song with Brett, right after his mom died. We had a couple drinks, and it was good to hang out with the boys. He actually came to my 40th birthday party here in Tinley, and it was cool. Good that he came down. Got to see a lot of people that he hadn't seen in a while, and I got off social media and meant to hang out with him, and just it never happened, and I really regret that, because I'm gonna miss him, man. He was a really good guy. Just one of those crazy diamonds, man. Just such a great guy. So again, I want to thank Brett, and hope you all stay safe during all this, and take care. Thanks.
I'm going to read something from a friend of Tim's, Debbie Trueblood of Carroll Stream, Illinois. Tim and I worked together at KB Toys in the mid-90s. I was in high school. We started hanging out together outside of work. When I later went away to college, he would come and visit me from time to time. I never met his other friends. I was a one-off, a work friend. I remember so many stories about his times in Iowa with his other friends. My roommate and I began to tease him because all of his stories were about Iowa. Tim and I were always platonic friends. We flirted, but nothing more. He used to write me letters at school, and every one of them started without introduction in the middle of a sentence. It was as if the first page was missing every time. His letters were a rambling stream of consciousness. It was as if he just ripped out a section of his diary and mailed it to me. And as weird as that was, it always made my day to hear from him. When I was home back in the suburbs, I remember how many times he would pick me up for a day out together, and I would end up asleep in his car in the middle of the afternoon. He asked me about it once, and I said I felt safe enough with him that I could let my guard down, and ended up falling asleep. In a crazy time in my life, when everything was stressful and chaotic, he was my safe space. He was quirky and had his own way of doing things, his own unique perceptions of people. But he was always honest, always intentional in his friendships. He showed you exactly who he was, the good, the bad, all of it. And he would call you out if you weren't entirely consistent too. I haven't seen him in probably 20 years, but I still miss him very much. Rest in peace, Spooky Tim.
These comments are from Beverly
Hoteling.
Hoteling. Okay. Aunt Bev is the oldest and last surviving sister of Tim's mom, Brenda. They grew up in rural central Pennsylvania. Incidentally, my grandmother's name is Bev, and I lost a cousin, Tim, about 2 years ago, so there's something about this that just like really gives me the, makes it feel meant to, that I could be here. So, dear Tim, I did not have an opportunity to meet you until you were almost 10 years old. You came with your mother to Center Hall for the funeral of Aunt Jim. Her real name was Wilma, and she was your grandmother's favorite sister. Aunt Jim's father had wanted another son, so he always called her Jim, and the name stuck for life. I remember you and Brett all dressed up for the service. Brett was outgoing and engaging, just like Brenda. I remember Brett, my husband, ducked out for hot chocolate and coffee at the train station coffee shop downtown. I remembered you stayed with your mother that whole day, Tim. It was a short visit. You and your family headed home right after the funeral. Time passed. I live in New Hampshire, and your whole family was in Illinois. Everyone was busy with their lives. And then my mother, your grandmother, Ann Allen Brown, was suddenly old. After a lifetime of caring for and supporting others, Mom needed care and support of her own. Your mother and your Aunt Priscilla packed Mom up and moved her to Chicago. That's where we met again. You were attending classes at Northern Illinois University. And I remember doing some laundry for you on the weekends home. I remember you in and out of the house to your job at Jewel, which you were working while attending school. You reminded me of all the weekend work of all the Brown sisters, me, your mom, and her, what we did during our own college years in Pennsylvania. I remember cooking some special dinners during those visits and sharing them in your mom's dining room in Forest Park. Thinking back on that time, I can see that I knew you only around the edges of your life. I'm sorry about that. Reading your obituary and your posts online, I learned what a literate and intellectual man you were. It was always a major life goal of the Brown sisters to raise educated, caring children. We all raised boys, and I'm so proud of your mom. I didn't know about your Goodreads book project and about your other intellectual interests. I regret that. It turns out that you loved and cared about so many things that are dear to me. I wish we'd been able to share some of them. We were not close, Tim, but you were my sister's son and a child of our family, and I am so sorry to be saying goodbye. Love from your Aunt Beth.
Hello, my name's Jeff. I'm one of Brett's friends, and I'm representing several of his friends who couldn't be here today. And before I read this, I just wanted to say, obviously, you guys don't, many of you haven't seen me before, and that's because I did not know Tim very well, but I did spend some time with the two brothers together, and always found him to be really whip smart and cuttingly funny. And like you, I thought to myself, well, at least one of these brothers can carry a conversation.
Thank God for that.
But sincerely, that word brothers, one of the days I spent with them was another time of family sadness. And I was just really struck by the obvious connection that they had. Some of the troubles now and again that they went through, I think that bond was unmistakable, and it's evident here today. This letter is from Bill Barker, who works in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles and could not be here today. When Brett invited Tim's friends to write something about him, I went back in time to reflect. I hadn't seen Tim in more than 25 years, so it took some time for me to summon those memories. But before too long, I could see him in full. Baggy jeans and flannel with a Soul Asylum t-shirt underneath, the scraggly goatee, how he hooked his thumbs in his pockets, bounced from one foot to the other when nervous or excited, how he cackled at his own jokes. That's the Tim I knew. I read his obituary online and noticed this phrase. Tim had, quote, a complicated relationship with formal schooling. To whoever wrote that, highest marks for understatement. Tim believed, quite simply, he was smarter than his teachers, and often enough he was. He was the guy in the back of class who challenged the teacher's authority and got away with it because usually he was right. The combination of his independent nature, his intelligence and curiosity, and his youthful cockiness revealed for him the secret of getting under the teacher's skin and staying there. Tim was simply right, capital R. Right about whatever he stood for, about whatever the topic at hand was, about the reality of things as they were. In my mind, he's always in the back of the classroom, the voice behind you, cutting off with a contrary opinion. In the senior yearbook, Tim was voted by his peers most likely to serve time. It was a title he disliked and regarded as libelous. So he protested vigorously until the school suspended the most likely section of the next yearbook, thus spoiling the hopes of many who had hoped to be their years most likely to serve time, host a talk show, open a tanning salon. Despite the title, Tim was not a criminal. He was, however, a rebel. And being the natural-born rebel most likely to convince the school administration he despised to suspend the cherished most likely section of the school yearbook was absolutely a part of Tim McNeil's character. No one but Tim could have thought to do it and see it through. Tim and I took an acting for theater course together senior year, and he and I paired up to stage a scene from True West. We played two brothers, one professional screenwriter and the other a petty thief and drifter, who fight over which of them knows better how to tell a true tale of the West. I played the screenwriter and he played the drifter. On the last day of class, we staged our scene for the class. We were well rehearsed, had added a few stunts and even brought in props. I remember Tim brought 40s filled with iced tea and water. We were ready to ace the scene, and for the first 2/3 of it, we did. Then the script took a sudden turn, and both of us lost our place in it. We stalled. Tim bounced and shifted from one foot to the other. One of his thumbs hooked into his pocket. He gave a little smile, as if he was about to cackle. We were about to lose the scene. Then some telepathy occurred between us, and as Tim moved to the next piece of blocking, I could see he had found our place in the script. We finished just fine. That was another side of Tim, the artist and seeker, who wanted to make you feel things as well as think them. He really liked the Eagles back then. He sang Peaceful Easy Feeling at the coffee house with a friend on guitar and Hotel California at karaoke. I've been to hundreds of coffee house performances and a few karaoke nights since then, but when you're 17, a friend singing the Eagles doesn't easily fade from memory, and I don't even like the Eagles. I started jotting down some memories of Tim last week, then fell into a rut of procrastination while searching for people, places, and events from the past. I somehow drifted back to a terrible event from 1993, a pair of horrible murders involving a classmate. I thought I'd read everything about it years ago, but stumbled on an old and updated blog called Unbidden Thoughts from the Underemployed. The author had posted a ton of information about these crimes with a lot of insight and authority. Where did this come from? Who wrote this? I went looking for a contact name. I thought I'd reach out and maybe we could work together on a project about these infamous events. Maybe we could just talk. I clicked around a bit and came to a link that stopped me short. About Timothy McNeil. I had no idea. For a long time, in the middle of a workday, I sat with the weight of this irony upon me. While avoiding writing about Tim, I'd stumbled upon him. It's too late to reach out. He's gone and gone too soon, and I regret I didn't reach out sooner. But Tim will always be there in the back of the classroom, with all of us waiting for him to interject, to say something no one else knows how to say or has the guts to say.
Everybody hear me? This is my third eulogy for an immediate family member in 9 years. And it's the last of the series. Somebody else can take it from here. I'm the only one left of those particular McNeils, the final eyewitness, and I suppose that's how it was always going to be. Losing Tim sucks, and grieving him has been different. He was 45 years old. I'm now older than he'll ever be. My younger brother, my only sibling. We were not terribly close for long stretches of time, but he was there for the real heavy stuff as kids, and he lived it too. I've known him as long as I can remember anything, and he carried a lot of the family lore and memory. He carried a lot of other baggage. Losing Mom felt like a cleaving of the past and present. Life with Mom in it, and then a suddenly delineated past tense, life with Mom not in it. Losing Tim feels more lugubrious and shapeless, like a diminution of the future under gray skies. The unsatisfying fizzling out of so much effort. The end of the line for those lives and times. Tim was the broken son of a broken family who never pieced himself together. To understand his story requires acknowledging how deeply stuck in that family and its rupture and ugly rippling aftershocks he remained throughout his life. We had some very good times as kids. The water slide, backyard birthday parties, youth sports and scouts, and a mountain of Star Wars presents for Christmas 1978. There was zero doubt for a long time that our parents and extended family, including and especially our grandparents McNeil, loved us and doted on us, that we were a special and tight-knit family. But there was, from early memory, a lot of anger and violence in the house, threats of violence, and inexcusably repeated threats of suicide. There were serious and chronic money problems, yielding other stresses and more of the same. Late night screaming matches, shoving matches, shoes and screwdrivers thrown through closet doors, Dad with a bungee cord threatening to hang himself in the garage if Mom really did take the boys and leave. It was a seesaw life. On the one hand, supportive and even arrogant. The academically gifted descendants of an airline pilot, sons of a dashing race car driver, carriers of a Scottish clan name with rugged provenance. On the other, impoverished and desperate, out of milk, bouncing checks at Bounty Foods, Dad climbing a utility pole and restoring the power after a disconnection. Dad sleeping off another daytime migraine in the dark. As Dad's racing dreams stalled and died, the sponsors gone, the time to earn a living overdue, so eventually did our parents' partnership and our family's trajectory. For years, we leaned on Mom and her earnings and commission sales, whole life insurance, hearing aids, credit repair, and a dwindling parade of products and services for which the demand and the leads were often weak. Dad floundered. He was a full-time, unpaid Little League coach and a full-time, unpaid scout leader. Sorry. He punched a couple of Mom's male co-workers. He accused Mom of cheating. He threatened a teenage umpire with a baseball bat after a blown call involving Tim. We lost the house when I was in 7th grade. Tim was in 5th. There was a bankruptcy and a rented apartment out of district where there were more fights. Mom finally pulled the ripcord in July 1986 while Dad and Tim and I were at the Owassipee Scout Reservation in Whitehall, Michigan. Things only got worse. Tim was a preemie, born early by cesarean section at Christ Hospital in Oklahoma. If he'd gone to term, we might have shared a birthday. Instead, he spent his first moments in a NICU incubator and did not come home for weeks. I was protective, and we were very close at that time in a tiny person kind of way. I fed him in his high chair and served as his spokesman to our parents and family, literally telling people what he meant or wanted, as Tim was so slow to speak, probably because I did it for him. He grew into a pretty little boy. You can see the photos out there. My son carries some of Tim's features, whose interests were always those of an indoorsman. He loved stuffed animals, figurines, and TV. Later Atari and computer games, then D&D. That never really changed. He still slept with an oversized stuffed bear, and it was on his bed when I cleaned out his apartment a few weeks ago. His fantasy figurines, many hand-painted, crowded his bookshelves and filled several large tackle boxes. The bookshelves were freighted with D&D manuals. Tim was a sensitive and interior child and a sensitive and interior man-child. And so much of who he was in October 2020 or October 2000 remained unchanged from who he was in October 1980 or October 1990. He was still and always a Detroit Tigers fan. His favorite players forever, Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker. He was still and always an ElfQuest fan, a Robotech fan, Star Wars and Star Trek fan, a Red Dawn and Young Guns fan, if you can believe it. The best bands never changed. A mostly period-specific roster of lesser lights, Solus Island, Afghan Wigs, and Big Drill Car. Tim at 45 dressed like he did in high school and early college, baggy jeans, layers of oversized shirts, a bean barn coat, and tiger's hat on his head. This is exactly how he looked. Blue jeans pooling at his ankles over white sneakers as he walked hunched out of our driveway to his car the last time I saw him awake, 3 days before he rushed to Stroger. He drove off mid-afternoon in a 16-year-old car purchased by Mom and never replaced. And he did not wave, which is as it ever was. Some of Tim's fidelity to the past was nostalgic, some stubborn, some probably just comfortable or comforting, but there was more to it, which he made clear many times, and which is evident to anyone who takes even a few moments to read the highly personal and confessional blog he kept between 2011 and 13, a time when he was living with Mom after her world had again blown apart in financial ruin, and Tim was, again, unemployed with time on his hands. An abridged version is on the memorial card many of you have in your hands. Something being a long time ago assumes that you fill the span between then and now with living. If you don't, then it will always be close. Tim wanted to be safe and happy, which was a place in the past, prior to and beyond the wreckage. He held dear a silver airplane that crashed and blew apart and would never be a plane again, except in photos and memory. He'd been on that bird and stumbled injured away from the debris and forever longed just to be back at the gate, readying for takeoff before everything went haywire. Here I must acknowledge that Tim had some kind of undiagnosed autism or Asperger's, and he struggled with mental illness, which he refused to treat. The chaos of our home life as kids meant he did not get the kind of sustained professional care that our classmates, sons and daughters, mostly sons and daughters of the upper middle class, would have readily accessed. Not an excuse, just a fact. That he lived as an adult with these issues and allowed them to deeply affect other people's lives, especially our mothers, is another, less forgivable part of the story. So I don't know how much of it was chemical or how much was mental or emotional, but if the past was fixed and was preferred, then it had to be guarded and preserved. Tim was the most exacting archivist and unflagging sentry he could imagine. Tim said one time, "It's always 1993 to me." The year he graduated high school and lost that structure, when his childhood relationships began to crumble and the girl got away. The year he composed a 3-page suicide note, sat on our dad's bed with a pistol to his head, and pulled the trigger to a dud. The year he cratered at college and came back to live with Mom for good. We returned from an emotional summer at Burt Lake on Labor Day weekend 1986 and moved into a rough little 2-bedroom apartment Mom rented behind the mall in Orland. Tim was starting 6th grade. Dad was supposed to leave after dropping us off, but did not, and instead claimed one of the bedrooms for himself, while Mom slept for months on an air mattress in the living room. It was a weird and embarrassing and very tumultuous time. I didn't know it then, but Mom told Dad to be out by Thanksgiving. By then that fall, there had already been a murder-suicide scare with a rival scout dad, physical fights, bad and worsening conditions in the home, waves of declension and misery. So, Thanksgiving arrived and Dad wasn't gone, and there were going to be separate holiday dinners, Mom with her sister, Dad with his. Mom gave Dad a $20 bill for gas and whatever. He shredded the bill and threw it in the toilet. He then walked into his bedroom, lit a cigarette, and collapsed to the floor in a seizure. It was frightening. I screamed and jumped on him as he flopped and bucked sideways into his closet. Tim heard my screaming and ran from the apartment. Dad finally stopped moving. I left him heaving on the floor and found Mom right around the corner, finishing her makeup. She'd had enough. I asked if she should call an ambulance, and she did. I found Tim cowering downstairs in the rear stairwell, tucked into an empty nook opposite a neighbor's back door. He had his face to the wall, his back to the world. I told him Dad was okay, that we'd be okay, which obviously wasn't true. Tim calmed down and we returned to the apartment to find a couple paramedics walking through the living room. Dad emerged from his bedroom as though nothing happened. He walked past the paramedics without a word, straight out the door. Tim and I quickly agreed he would stay with Mom, I'd go with Dad, so no one would be alone. It was our first holiday apart. As we drove off, Dad turned to me and asked, "You have any money for gas?" Throughout this time and all time, Tim sought something he could not obtain and never did: our dad's care and attention. I've had a lot to think about and to absorb since Mom died so suddenly 5 years ago, and as Tim slipped away in a coma just 6 weeks ago. I have complicated and complex feelings for both of them and for what happened to them and to us. But the runaway loser in this story is my dad. Fuck him. His legacy ends here. The shadow he cast and the scars he left on Tim, the havoc he wrought on all of us, the selfish vanity, the disgusting, unrelenting self-centeredness. I said what I had to say to him a decade ago before he shot himself during a fight with his wife. And I've lived with zero regrets since. He was never my equal, and he didn't deserve his sons. But Tim didn't make that peace. He didn't develop his own self outside the sadness of our dad's neglect. There were so many examples, but the one Tim always returned to was during another suicide crisis, again in the 90s, when Tim reached out to Dad for help, for an invitation to Denver, and Dad said, "Not now." He was busy teaching a motorcycle course for strangers. Tim stayed home and did not die, but carried that bruise for the rest of his life. I wish he had not, but I understand. Tim was rigid and brittle, and he needed something that he could not give himself. We scattered Dad's ashes in Palos a couple years ago, and Tim surprised me when he burst into tears. "I don't know why you didn't love me," he sobbed. The weekend before he was hospitalized, Tim stood in my kitchen late at night talking about this very thing. It never ended. On the night of October 7, as he lay in a hospital bed, texting and posting frighteningly to Facebook, Tim was clearly thinking he might die. He wrote that doctors had diagnosed an aortic dissection, and because it was Tim writing, he took time to note that an aortic dissection had killed John Ritter. He asked me to take care of his cat, contact his friends to rescue his books. His last public post, his dying words read, "Say all the bad stuff at the service." He probably meant the bad stuff about Tim. But the very worst I can say about Tim is that he failed to love or care more for himself, or to trust in and rely on himself. That's on him, but not solely on him. When our parents were breaking up, Dad demanded that we take sides. He told us Mom slept around, had aborted another guy's baby, was also a dyke, was a liar, a manipulator, a thief. He sought to destroy Mom and our relationship with her. He was aided by his parents, principally his mother. Grandma spent that long summer of 1986 when Tim turned 11, libeling Mom as a conniving deceiver and a bisexual slut. As she said this, Mom was homeless in Illinois. She was sleeping on a friend's office couch, picking up shifts at Radio Shack and trying to make something out. Years later, Tim needed money for school and went to Grandma and Grandpa for help. Over a restaurant dinner, they offered to assist on one condition: that Tim admit Mom had tricked Dad into marrying her and had ruined everything for him. Tim left the table and did not speak to our grandparents for 8 years. Good for him. A couple weeks before she died at 92 in the summer of 2010, Grandma returned to this garbage smear during a phone call with me. Many years after Mom had made something impressive of her life and Dad had devolved into a housebound, drug-seeking opioid addict. This shit never went away. And it circumscribed our family life. What began as a big and happy extended family shrank to a trio. For many years it contracted further to a two-piece, Mom and Tim, that grew increasingly inter and codependent. Mom was Tim's protector, champion, cheerleader, abettor, and enabler. She was also a punching bag. But without Mom, Tim would have been gone a long time ago. He would have allowed himself to fall and to keep falling. Mom's the one. She carried him and muled it and swallowed so much for so long, and she deserves all the credit. She was a remarkable and truly memorable person. She was fucking great. Days before she died, Mom told me, "I won't abandon my son, not when he's making progress." The night she did die, Tim came home from gaming and found Mom on the bathroom floor. She was cold, and he called the cops, who arrived and asked him to step outside. A short time later, he was buzzing our bell and saying through the intercom, "It's your brother. Mom's dead." He stepped into the living room, lit by streetlight, and stood stunned, swaying like a tree in the wind. No more net. Tim and I spent long periods estranged during limited contact. It was hard for me to watch him throttle Mom's life, and after a while, it was impossible to even be in their house. As a parent, I now have some sense of Mom's predicament and her decisions. It really was her and no one else for Tim. Mom's death was a tragedy, but it brought me and Tim back together. The relationship we had recently, hit or miss as it may have been, would never have happened if he were still a millstone around Mom's neck. So these last years, whatever else they were, have been the best between us as adults. He genuinely liked Lindsay and would buttonhole her in the kitchen or the living room, impatiently waiting for her to finish a sentence so he could resume his own thoughts, just like he would with me. He loved Ian. Tim was with us for holidays. He made dinner for us a couple times, and when things were good at Jewel and we were in North Riverside, he'd drop by unannounced with chicken from the fryer or cold cuts from the deli. He was working full-time for the first time, and it was pretty normal and fun. He enjoyed our home, our little family, and we made it clear he was always welcome. There were some laughs and good cheer. This rapprochement began with his trip to State College to scatter Mom's ashes on Mount Nittany in June of 2016, a year after her death. It was Tim's 41st birthday, and he and Lindsay and I carried flowers in a coffee can urn to an overlook above Beaver Stadium in the Penns Valley. Tim was terribly out of shape, and he huffed and puffed up the trail, stopping several times to rest and catch his breath. It was alarming, but Tim continued on, and we held a little ceremony, tossed the ashes, and headed back to the cars. As we descended, Tim was struggling less obviously, and he said, "I can walk down the mountain." A near perfect metaphor for Tim and his approach to life. He could walk down the mountain. We all laughed. Tim had problems, and as he would say, issues, but he was self-aware and knew he should do better and probably could do better than he did. He was unhappy with himself for many reasons, especially not living up to his abilities. He wrote romantic clay fiction, and in one especially telling story, mused about a suicide and how the Tim Stanton character wanted to be remembered. Come to think of it, if I ever do kill myself, that's the line I want as both my note and on the headstone. Not that I think anyone would pop for a headstone. There was a time when I had potential and promise, and friends expected great things. I wish Tim had expected great things from himself and had worked even a little to make them happen. I wish he'd been able to draw on stronger reserves from himself rather than lamenting the care and support he did not get from others, rather than wasting the limitless support he got from his mother. I've mentioned Tim was with us the weekend before he was hospitalized. He invited himself this time, which was unusual, and we ended up late Friday night in a conversation that covered all the same family and old times ground we covered in all our late night conversations. But this one was rawer and more open, and I'm not revising the memory because of what came after. He spoke of Dad, Grandma, Mom. He spoke of himself. He choked up and said, "I'm a failure." I'd never heard Tim say that before. Maybe he was. His life had unraveled during the pandemic, and the state of his apartment made clear Tim had stopped with even the basics. Maybe the end was coming no matter what. But Tim did seek medical help. He did try to live. And he outlasted Mom by 5 years. Dad was dead 10 months after Grandma. Unlike Dad, Tim did not mean to die. Tim did, more recently, reach out in his halting way and try to connect. He was warmer at times and slightly more open. He shared something more about himself than an opinion. I know Tim came to regret his decisions and his non-decisions to remain stuck in place. But he did at least entertain a different future. One recurring recent dream was a breakfast-only restaurant. He would text me questions about the pretend menu, and he planned the financing and location and build-out as a diversion from his life in quarantine. Likely nothing would have ever come from it, but I regret he'll never get the chance. I regret it's all over. After the doctors took Tim off life support, I stayed behind and shared with him some mementos, including family photos that I tucked into his hospital gown, and some thoughts. He actually looked pretty good, and just like himself. He was breathing without a ventilator, almost normal, except for the coma. I don't believe he could hear me, but I told him that I liked having a brother and having him as my brother. I'd like everyone here to know that too. I told him that he was a better man than his dad. I'm glad, even after all the hard times, to have known and gotten to know Tim. I wish we'd all had more fun. He was a difficult but loyal person. He was smart when he wasn't angry. He was funny when he wasn't self-serious. He knew a lot, even if his memory wasn't as precise as he believed. He was an interesting and intense guy who noticed and cataloged a lot, for better and for worse. I will remember my brother, and I will miss him. I wish Ian got to know him better, even if he would have always been odd old Uncle Tim. I will wish he'd had more time. I know Tim didn't always want that for himself, but I am thankful that he died a relatively natural death and did not hurt himself. I'm sorry that threat was such a constant in his life, but I'm glad he cared enough about himself to seek help at the hospital. That it was too late in so many ways is a heartbreak and a goddamn shame. Before I left his room, I asked him to do two things, which I'll repeat. Go easy and take better care of yourself wherever you're headed. I also told him you will always have a place in my life and in my family. And I said something we never, ever said to one another. I told him that I loved him. I gathered my things and walked off the unit and out of the hospital and down Polk Street to a city park where Lindsay and Ian were playing on a jungle gym. Ian McNeil. Tim died 3 days later, about 8 in the morning, the day after Halloween. A doctor called to tell me, and while I was awaiting the news, its finality was still so sad. It's still so sad. My brother Tim died. Hard to fathom. Thanks for coming.
Play one more song for you all before we head down to the beach, but does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share about Tim?
I remember that I met Bronger. I started going to school with Tim from kindergarten. I graduated with him from high school and lost touch with him after that. But I remember in high school that Tim was on the football team, which kind of made him an odd duck right off the bat because he could pronounce words that most of those guys couldn't even look at. He didn't hang out in the football crowd, but he was certainly one of their favorites in that if you told Tim, I need this guy out of my way, if that guy was twice the size of Tim, that guy was out of your way. And Tim would put his head down no matter what it was, be it football or trying to teach someone less gifted like myself calculus freshman year. When Tim made his mind up to do something, it got done if he wanted to do it. And it was those things that he had to do that were his Achilles heel. It's a shame to miss that I'll miss Tim as much as I will. And I'm sorry, Brett, for your loss.
Thanks, man.
I'm Brian Majeski. I'm a friend of Tim's from tabletop gaming. It's obviously one of his hobbies that was long-standing. I've only known Tim for a couple of years, and I was one of the last people that, I was finding out one of the last people to kind of trade messages with him, along with Brett and everyone else. And I only knew Tim for a couple of years, right towards the end. And my first memory of him was actually sitting down at the table, and the very first evening I was sitting there with him, I think in a matter of about 15 or 20 minutes after we started gaming for the first time, he stands up in a huff and storms off, and in a very Tim fashion, as we come to find out. And I go, well, it's interesting. And as I'm finding out through, obviously, the summary of everything about Tim, it seems like, yep, it's par for the course. But from there, through just experience gaming and such, Tim, and despite all that, Tim and I managed to grow together and kind of become really close friends. And just even though we only really communicated just through gaming, and just hanging out afterwards and just chit-chatting, I got to see little glimpses of just the history of what made Tim who he was, and just going back and forth. And I became kind of like somebody who could spar with him a little bit as far as just, trading thoughts and ideas about anything from gaming to just what was going on in his life. And sometimes, it was kind of like a sounding board, or even just be able to just chat back and forth. He'd have a question, and I'd try and answer, and then he'd give me the answer that he wanted. That was usually what would happen. We would end up, just hanging out for hours and just talking. And, I'd like to think that the friendship kind of sprouted from there. And everything kind of came from, it's still processing a lot of it myself. And it's just, he's going to be very, very missed. And I mean, I'm missing him more than I even thought I would. And, I'm very glad I get a chance to say goodbye and meet Brett for the first time, obviously. And even though I had this one little sliver, it's very nice to kind of just even come and say my farewell. And hopefully, he finds the peace he didn't find, previously.
Thank you.
we can hang, I mean, we don't have to rush out to the beach. Nobody has to go down there. It's actually, I mean, the waves are up. So I don't know. Maybe I'll take the temperature of the room. Who wants to put a coat on and walk to the beach, and who wants to just have a beer and hang out for a second? Okay. We go down the beach. Let's go. But this is like the ultimate Timothy Allen McNeil. Happiness. A state you must dare not enter with hopes of staying. Quicksand in the marshes, and all the roads leading to a castle that doesn't exist. But there it is, as promised, with its perfect bridge above the crocodiles, and its doors forever open. Andy Kroger wrote to me to talk about coming here, and he reminded me something he was saying I hadn't thought about in a long, long time. You want to say it? Now, may the great Scoutmaster, all true Scouts, be with us till we meet again. It's the Virginia Palos Park Police. Up there close to your That girl matters.